Hi everyone. In this last lecture, we're going to be looking at collections, interfaces, and iterators. Now, you may have seen these before in Python and maybe overloading some of these items in other languages. We're not going to focus too much on these too much in this course, but I do want to just introduce them and show you the Java file where they're prevalent. So, a collections in the util package lets us use data structures without having to code them ourselves. And what that means is essentially that we could have groups of objects together, such as elements, and then it's going to abstract some of these references away from each other. So again, this is going to be a bit similar to what we used in Python with lists, except instead of it being an array, it will just be a collection. Each collection is also going to have accessors and mutators, which is going to change the collection and then access some of the collections as well. The collection is an interface again, and so interfaces, as we remember, is nothing that it doesn't implement any specific types of code, but it implements specific behaviors without the implementation. So again, what it's trying to say is you need to have a certain type of behavior, but I'm not going to tell you how to implement that behavior. Some of the accessors include of an interface, of a collection interface, equals, where it returns true if the one object O is similar to the other one, is empty. And then this iterator of E, and you'll notice this E is this type of reoccurring type that's inside of here. And what this is a method that allows you to move to the elements of the collection, and then the size. So it's going to return the size of the calling collection. We also have a few mutators, such as adding to the collection an object E, and then removing from it as well. And you can also see that the table lists some interfaces here, such as a hash set, which is one of the collections that we'll see later. And then, of course, we have a array list and a linked list. So one specific thing is that the collection has this iterator or iterable interface. And what this means is that it allows us to go through elements in some order. So if we create an iterator of T, and it's going to be an iterator object, we are going to be able to access a few of these items here. So if we have a collection of strings, and it's going to be declared to be whatever, what we could say is I'm going to iterate through string objects. And what I'm going to set this equal to is the collections.iterator, because every collection is going to have an iterator object. Now, the way that you can iterate through an iterator is by saying while iter.hasNext, and then using this code of .next to go through it. And again, this is going to kind of replace a for loop. So right here, you'll notice that this is going to be called an enhanced for loop. And this is kind of summarizing a lot at once, but what it's saying is for every string object called string in my collection, do something to it. What happens if we have an integer? For every integer int in my collection, do something to it. Now again, this right here, this enhanced for loop that we see right here is identical to this one over here, except it looks a bit easier to write and it looks a bit neater as well. We also have this list iterator interface, which is a sub-interface of iterator with methods such as adding an element and then setting the visited elements to a different value and navigating backwards. And you can go ahead and create a list iterator of a list by using this constructor. List iterator of E, then its variable name, and then the index. This is going to return a list iterator over the elements in the list, starting with the specified index. So most likely we're going to start this at 0, but you could also start it at the end. And what is the end of your index? Well, it's going to be the amount or the size of the list minus 1, right? Because we start counting from 0. So there's a few methods a part of each of these list iterators as well that are listed here. Has previous returns if there's an object at the beginning of list, and false if it is at the beginning. Next index, which goes ahead and looks at the other index. Next is going to actually return the next element. Previous is going to return the previous one, and then this one is going to return the previous index. So where this is all actually implemented is in this method called enter_strings_redux. And you can see here, we go ahead and we create an array list called user list, and it's going to call this getStrings method. What does getStrings do? Well, getStrings is going to return an array list of type string, and it's going to open up a scanner. And inside of this scanner, it's going to create a new array list. And while we are while the user hasn't entered quit, we are going to ask the user to add in items. We're going to add those items into this array list called the list. And then we're going to return the list here. And so now user list is going to be equal to the list down here. And now what we do is we create a list iterator called iter, and it's going to be calling the users list dot list iterator. So again, every single array list, if I do it down here, The list.list iterator, every array list has a list iterator a part of it. It's kind of an object that is inside the list. And what is the size of our list iterator? Well, we need to make sure it goes to the very end. So this is going to be called user list size. And we can see here, we are going to get the elements that we entered in reverse because we go from the end of the list and we're going backwards. So you can see here we use iter.previous. So let me go ahead and run this code for us. And I'm going to type in John, Rose, and Duchess. And I'm going to type in quit here. And we'll notice that we actually get the elements backwards than what we typed in. How would I go ahead and get these elements forward? Well, why don't we try to do this here? I'm going to go ahead and say system.out.println the elements going forward, or the elements forward. And what I'm going to say is, hey, while my iter.has next instead of previous, right? Because previous is going backwards. I'm going to say, go ahead and print out iter.next plus that item right there. Now, the only difference here is that this list iterator is going to be declared to the user list.size. I'm going to call this one iter forward, and I'm going to change the items down here like so. And I want to start at the very start, so I'm going to start this at 0 instead of the end of my list there. Let's see if this is going to work for us here. Oops. And we can see here, I'm going to actually add in one more print line at the end here, just so we get a bit of space. If I type in John, Rose, and then Duchess, and I type in quit, we'll see here the elements going forward are John, Rose, and Duchess, and then the elements in reverse is Duchess, Rose, and John. So everyone, there's quite a few things going on in here, but in general, this is how you can iterate manually through an array list. Instead of using a for loop, you can use this enhanced for loop that references these collections. Again, you're not going to be too tested on these items here, so don't worry if this is a lot at once, but this is just showing you a few ways that you can use these iterators and then go forward and backwards in your code.